hope you're having a great week. Hey, I've gotten a few questions the last few days about assignments in Mod 6 and 7, a little bit in Mod 5 as well. So I wanted to do a single video to show some of these questions that you're having and some ways to handle them. One of the questions I got was about appropriate versus inappropriate usage. This is your Mod 6 assignment. I've seen this question come up in previous terms as well, so I'm just going to show you a few examples of what these mean. Talk about artboards and stationery boxes, layering them, rotating them, adding shadows, or adding a background image. We're going to talk about embedding versus linking images, creating watermarks and patterns, and creating what appears to be a bold text or a slenderized text, a thinned down text. And a part of that is using the stroke window, using Pathfinder tools, outlining type, and outlining stroke. Anyway, hopefully this will fine-tune your designs even further and give you the answers to your questions. All right, I'm going to try and move a little bit quickly so I don't waste any of your time. You can always rewind and rewatch as you need to, or let me know via text or, email if you have a question. All right, so first thing I want to cover is appropriate versus inappropriate usage. The best way to find out what I mean by this and what you need to do for your portfolio is to look at those portfolio examples that I've been attaching to several of the announcements over the last few weeks. So I just uploaded a couple of those here. This is the portfolio for All Stars that I posted for you guys. But if you look at the appropriate versus inappropriate usage, you do need to have a minimum of 3 of each type. Okay, so this one's talking about space around the logo. This one is a single color or a monochrome logo. And this is what's considered a knockout version of the logo. So these are all 3 appropriate usage. These are 5 different inappropriate usage. So this one is altering the type, altering the colors, rearranging the layout, altering the proportions or skewing it, scaling it down in a kind of non-ratioed manner. And this is using it on a busy background, which just won't work. Okay, so have a look at the examples that I sent you guys. And they all have this page. They all handled it a little bit differently, but you'll see some similarities too. Okay. And make sure that you're really clear. I mean, doing this big pink X, don't do this, is a great way of handling the don'ts and the do's. Just label it. You want a little bit of text just telling them what it is that they're looking at that is incorrect or correct. Okay, but you don't need to overdo it on this particular portfolio page. All right. All right, so do have a look at those examples. I've been including them throughout the term. I think they're actually in the pre-term announcements as well. So they're out there. Just please go have a look at those. All right. Next thing I want to show you guys is artboards and stationery boxes. Okay, so normally when you guys start a file, you probably are starting with an 8.5 by 11-inch artboard. And if you go over 2 artboards, it would have been your number 1 artboard. Now, if you guys want to add additional artboards for doing your portfolio, doing your stationery set, whatnot, you can do that simply by clicking on the Add Artboard page, okay? And if you want to delete it, you do the same thing. Okay, you also should be aware of your artboard tool over here. And in doing this, you can pick up an entire artboard and its contents and move it. So that's kind of handy. And you can also, for this one, I have to make it a little bit wider because I use this for the envelope. So you can also use this to extend your artboard space. All right. So when you guys are creating your stationery boxes, you really just want to start on your first artboard. And I have created layers, just try and, I've actually redid this. I did this entire demo yesterday and my computer crashed, so I'm redoing it. But anyway, layer 1 and layer 2 boxes. Okay, so I created a layer for my boxes. And I'm simply going to click on my box tool, or my square rectangle tool. I click on the background. And I'm going to type in 8.5 inches by 11 inches. Click OK. And I'm just going to give it a temporary color just so you guys can see it. And I'm going to place it on my artboard. I'm going to move over. This is going to be my envelope. So envelopes come in multiple sizes, but a standard American business envelope is what's called a number 10. And it is 9.5 5 inches long, and it is 4.125 inches high, and that creates your envelope. If you want to do a different design for the back of your envelope, you can simply copy and paste. That you have two. And then business cards, standard American business cards, are 3.5 by 2 inches. Do keep in mind that European business cards are a different size. There's also different protocols or kind of techniques that you need to use on business cards for different areas in Asia. So ask your client if they're planning on doing this only stateside or if they do have plans to go international. If that's the case, you will want to find out how to handle a business card for, say, a Japanese customer or something like that. There's different protocols that you do need to adhere to. It's really disrespectful to hand someone a business card in Japan in the incorrect manner or with the incorrect information on it. So you want to make sure you get that right. When you're doing your business cards, you have a choice of doing a vertical or horizontal layout, and that will be largely determined by the shape of your logo. If you are doing a logo that has primarily a horizontal layout, then you're probably going to be doing a horizontal business card. If this text was underneath, or if you have some kind of stacked image and it's more of a vertical layout, then a vertical layout on your business card is most likely appropriate. I've also done business cards with die-cut cutouts, which are really fun. They're expensive for the client, but they're really fun. I've also done a round business card. There are some other varieties out there, but always check with your client before you get too adventurous because everything costs them more money. So we want to make sure we keep the cost down for them if that is something that, is a concern for them, which it usually is. So in this case, I am going to do 3.5 inches by 2 inches. Okay, and again, if you're doing a front and back business card, which is pretty common these days, most people have a double-sided business card, then you simply just double it up. Okay, now once you've done your boxes, they look a little different than this, obviously, but once you do that, what you're going to do is going to grab all of your boxes. And first thing you want to do is fill them with whatever color. Okay, now you may just be planning on using traditional white paper, and that's perfectly fine. But maybe you have a client such as Paws and Claws or even Upper Crust Bakery where they would prefer an ivory background or ivory paper stock or parchment or any kind of color, vellum, anything like that. So you want to choose your background color. I'm just going to use white today. And for the outside stroke of the boxes, you'll see it's currently white. I'm actually going to put that in a pale gray. I want to be able to see it, but I don't want it to be like super obvious like a black line would be. Okay. So once I've done that, you can barely see my boxes. Okay. And I'm going to show you guys a couple other things. Now at this point, before I do anything else, I would go ahead and finish all my layout. I would drop in my logo, I would add my address, I might do a watermark or a pattern on the background, which I'm going to show you guys how to do. I would take some kind of graphical element from my logo. In this case, it's an easy pick. But you may also do a simple series of lines. You may do like a watery type mark if you're doing like the little guppies one. There's all different ways of handling it, but you need some kind of graphical element that ties together the stationery, the business envelope, and the business cards. Okay, so you would go ahead and design all your items just like this. Okay, using that gray line on the outside as your guide. Okay, you can always hand draw the point for the back of the envelope if you need to. Okay, it's a good way of handling it. But in any case, you get those all ready to go. Once your stationery is completely finished and you're very happy with everything, you don't want to change another thing, you're perfectly happy with it. At this point, you're going to want to scale it down and arrange it on a single artboard. Okay, so grab all of your material, use the scale tool, double click, opens up your scale. Okay, you can choose to scale your strokes and effects, which are generally a good idea. If you have objects or patterns, corners, I leave all these on for most of the work that I do in the scale tool. Okay, and you can either type in a number here or you can just use your arrow keys to go up or down. Okay, it depends on what you want. I know from experience I generally go for about 55%. And I'm going to click OK. Okay, so that is now scaled down my 5 boxes. But before I arrange these on my final page, I want to do something else, and that is add a drop shadow. And once you add a drop shadow, it kind of lifts them off the page and you're able to stack these items really nicely. So adding a shadow is super easy. Go into Effect, Stylize, Drop Shadow. Okay, the standard drop shadow will come up and you're perfectly welcome to use that. I tend to go a little bit lighter with my shadow. You can also play with the blur and the offset to see if you like a slightly different look. Okay, once you're happy with that, you click OK. And now you have a little drop shadow on all 5 of your boxes. And now you can start arranging your boxes. So remember that these boxes or these stationery items already have all your information on them, okay? For the sake of time, I'm not going to do that, but I do want you guys to know that that's what we would be seeing. And then you would simply arrange your stationery in a way that looks nice to you. Okay, you don't want the page to be too crowded, but you also want to make sure you get everything in there. Okay, you want nice alignments, nice spacing. This is your professional work, so present your work in the best way you possibly can. Okay, so that would be my final artboard with my stationery on it. All right, you can add certainly a title, information as you need. If you want to tilt this, you can. If you wanted to take all of these items and then rotate it, you might need to adjust it a little bit like that. That would be another way of handling it. When you do something like this, it does make it more difficult for someone else to come along and steal your work. So it's not a terrible idea to do a little tilt. And another thing you can do is add a background image. Like maybe you want it to look like it's laying out on a wooden desk or on a metal sheet, something really simple but really clean in the background. You can purchase packets of screensavers or background images, textures, surfaces. There's all different types of things out there that you can purchase really inexpensively and get a pack of like 100 different options. So you want to go and find one of those, and I loaded one on here earlier. And I'm just going to drag this down and drop it behind my images. But you'll see how once you do that, you get a really nice look to your layout. Okay, keep in mind that this little piece is not going to show up when the PDF file is on your client's desk or on their screen. They're not going to see this little corner, and that's okay. It's not usually an issue unless you have some design artifact that you want to make sure that you include. Okay, so you just want to build all these layers up. Okay, I have this underneath. Okay, you can also use your layers over here, which is probably the best way. I'm not doing that right now simply because of time, but it is a good idea to use a layer for your picture and a layer for each of your stationery items, and that way you can arrange them as you need to and keep control of your image. I do want to also point out something here. This is the next thing about embedding versus linking images. So I copied this image and then I pasted it into this file. And when I copy and paste an image, it generally will embed the image. And you should see the word embed up here. An embedded image is a part of this file with all the artboards, all the scratch space and items on that scratch area. It's a part of this file. If it only says linked up here, then it is not a part of this file. And if a colleague or a client, classmate, if anybody opens up your file, a linked image will not have anything to link to because it's on your hard drive, not on their hard drive. So make sure if you're using any kind of photographic background or anything, make sure that it is embedded in your file. Okay, and you can click on that and you can make changes as you need to as well. All right. So that is embedded versus linked images. All right. So moving right along, I'm going to show you watermarks and patterns. And these are really easy and really fun to work with. So if you want to do a watermark, a common way of doing a watermark is on a on a letterhead. So typical 8.5 by 9 sheet, you would have your logo dropped in, you would have some kind of design maybe around your address, your contact information, however you arrange that. And then a common way of handling a watermark in a stationary setting anyway. Okay, let me ungroup this a sec. Is to grab the symbol. You can scale that up. And there's a lot of different ways of handling this. This is just one. Probably should have just typed this number in instead of doing it the slow way, but okay. But you will notice that I still have scale, strokes, and effects on there. Make sure you keep an eye on that when you guys are scaling stuff. Okay, this is crazy. All right. So I'm going to come down here. And I want you to take a look down here in your navigator window. This is what is actually going to show up on the file. The stuff outside of the file will not show up on a PDF. Okay, it will show up in the AI file or other versions, but it will not show up in a PDF. So if you're simply testing the market and seeing if your client likes this look, you don't have to take the time to use your Pathfinder tools and to get rid of all this extraneous information. Okay, for just this purpose, you don't have to worry about it because you're just seeing it as a PDF file. At some point before you hand it to a client, if they actually wanted this on their stationary set, then you would have to take the time to use the Pathfinder tools and to trim out all this extra stuff. Okay, but for the time being, this is the look that we're going for. I'm going to leave it in the corner. I'm going to drop the opacity way down. And that is basically my watermark. Okay, very simple, very effective, adds a little visual interest, but doesn't overwhelm the page. And it still is very typable. You know, you can still type on this page and you can still read everything. Okay, typable. Nice words. Okay. I would probably go a little bit lighter for a watermark. How about that? You know, and if you have a color on it instead of just black or gray in this case, then you could go with a different level of opacity. But just experiment until you like what the look is. Make sure it prints out well for you. Okay, so that is a watermark. You can do this on your envelope, on your business cards. You can do it in your portfolio if you wish. There's all different places that you can do this type of look for, if you like it. Okay, and again, it's a personal taste kind of thing for you and your client. All right, next thing I want to show you is how to do a pattern, which is basically this. Okay, kind of cool, right? Looks really complicated to do, actually super easy. Okay, it used to be complicated to do, but Illustrator's come a long way in the last few years, so they make it easier. All right, so first thing I did was to take a copy of my symbol. I shrank it down to make it fairly small. I'm just going to zoom in so you guys can see. Okay. And then you select it and you go to Object, Pattern, Make. And it will pop open a pattern option window, and it will also place your pattern into your swatches panel. Okay. So click OK. And now you have your pattern. Now the first thing I do is I go, whoa, that's a lot of pattern. Okay, so I'm going to change a few things. You can label your pattern up here. You can change the tiling. You can change the spacing. You can change all types of things in here. Okay, and really you just want to play in this until you like what you got. Okay, so I'm going to do a little, let it breathe a little bit more. It's way too tight for my taste. I like a lot of empty space because it allows my viewers to digest what it is they're seeing. Okay, so I would probably go something like that. These different tile types are really fun to play with too. You can do hexes and all kinds of stuff. So depends on the shape that you're after. But there's some really nice ones in there. I do encourage you to play with them and see what you like. Okay, you can do different versions of it down here as well. Again, play with your options and see what you like. Once you have it the way that you want it, then you simply click Done up here. And now your pattern is in your swatches panel. So now in this case, I'm going to delete that. I'm going to draw out a rectangle. Well, I can draw it this size for that matter. You can draw it any size you want. Okay, go to your fill and click on your pattern. And now you have your pattern. I keep doing that. Okay, now in many cases you're not going to want it to be this bold of a pattern. I mean, maybe you do, but probably for most things you will not. So instead, you can take this and you can drop the opacity down. That is really subtle pattern. So this can look really nice in the back of your portfolio pages. If you leave it a little more bold, you may also wish to do like boxes on top of it, which actually have your information in it. Okay, so you could type in your information here. You could show your type, for instance, or your colors. You could do another one. So maybe on this page you talk about the colors that you've chosen and why you've chosen them, and down here you demonstrate the values in CMYK and RGB. You can also do Pantone. I do Pantone more than I do CMYK nowadays. I do a lot of pattern design, so that's starting to become much more a part of what I do. You could add some kind of detail here. You could even lift these boxes off the page with a shadow, similar to what you did here. Just be careful. Shadows like this add a lot of memory, or a lot of memory requirements to your system as you're working, but also it adds a lot of size to your files. Photographs are the same thing. I generally don't put in shadows in photographs and things like that until the very, very end of my working, because otherwise it makes my system a little laggy sometimes. It can crash a lot more easily. It just takes more effort. So I like to wait to do things like this until the very, very end. All right, so there are your patterns and your watermarks. The last thing I'm going to show you is how to make text appear to be bold. Okay, so you'll see a difference between these, or how to slim it down, and I'll show you that. All right, so this is the official text that I am using. I'm just going to drag it over here. Okay, now sometimes you'll have a font that you really like the look of, but you'll need it to be more dense, more bold. And not all fonts or typefaces have that option. Plenty of them do. This is Museo Slab. It's actually one of my favorite serif fonts because it doesn't have any thick, thin variation. But sometimes I do need it to be a little more bold, or sometimes I need it to be slimmed down a little bit just to have that kind of visual difference, which draws attention to different parts of my design. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to show you guys a really simple way of doing a bold. Now, if you're simply doing text on a white background, all you really have to do is go into stroke and do the same color stroke on your text. And you can see that it starts to have that bold appearance. Now, you do want to watch the spacing. You might need to come down to your character palette and adjust the leading or the kerning between your letters. Okay, you do want to make sure that. And sometimes when you add a stroke, you'll get these little spiky artifacts that pop off your letters. Most of the time, you can get rid of those spiky artifacts by simply changing your caps to a rounded cap. Okay, it doesn't make that much of a difference visually here, but in some cases it really does. So play with your different caps and play with your different corners to see how that affects the artifacts that may or may not pop up. Okay. And then if you want to make a text slimmer, for instance, so maybe you want this, but you want more of a difference between the thicker and the thinner version of this lettering. So in that case, you would add a stroke to these letters, which is the same as the background color. In this case, it's just white, so super easy. But you'll see how you can add, and it slims down your text. Now you have to be careful because you're going to start getting issues with your text. You can fix these manually, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. But Often you just have to be super careful not to overdo it. So that is a 1-point font. And that is none at all. So you can see that's 0.25, 0.5, 0.75. That's about the max that I would do. I would go ahead and round everything off. Okay, and then I would use it as is. Now, I've already mentioned to you guys several times, before you put any text into a file and expect other people to be able to read it, you have to do what's called outline your text. So once you're happy with what your text looks like, you've got all the spacing down, the sizing, everything is perfect in your mind. You want to make a copy of that text, push it off into your scratch area. And then for this type, you want to go up to Type and Create Outlines. Now once you do this, it is no longer text. It's just a series of objects with paths and points. Okay? It is no longer text. But you can see how the stroke is currently laying on those two paths. This is the one that made it thicker looking. This is the one that made it thinner. So this is the same color stroke. This is the same color as the background. Okay, so now we haven't really changed the lettering. All we did was add a stroke. Okay, now you can submit something like this to a client or a colleague and such, and it probably isn't a huge deal. But before I allow anything to go to a client and therefore go to a printer, I make it as simple as I possibly can. Nothing I send to a printer has a stroke on it. Nothing. Because what I do is this. I grab my image, or my letters, my objects here. I go to Object, Path, Outline the stroke. And what that has done now is created an object of my stroke and an object of my fill. Since everything is already selected up here, I simply go to Pathfinder and I hit Unite. And now I don't have those multiple paths. I have a single path on the outside of my letters with that thick, bold look to it. And this is what I would send to a client. I would not send anything with strokes to a client. It can become problematic for the printer. It gives more opportunity for people to mess with my work. My work is my work. Don't mess with it. That's kind of my opinion about it. I don't want people altering the work that I put my name on. And really, you should be very protective over your creative work like that. Okay. This one, it's a little bit of a different process. I also want you guys to see something that happens with the stroke here. I'm just going to make the stroke a different color just temporarily so you can see it. But you'll see how the path is in the center of that yellow stroke because I've aligned the stroke to the center here. By the way, if you don't see all of this, click on this arrow. Okay, it opens up different parts of the window. Same thing on the character window. I don't know why it does this, but it does. So just make sure you can see everything that you need. Okay, back to align stroke. So right now the stroke is aligned to the center. I can also align it to the inside, and I can align it to the outside. And you'll see how that changes the look dramatically. Now keep in mind that we want to use this to slim down our font. So we definitely want it to be on the inside. Okay, and there's going to be a few areas I'm going to have to fix manually, and that's okay as long as I'm aware of it. It's not a big deal. Okay, let's go ahead and do it over here. All right, so once I have selected my text with the stroke, don't worry about the color of the stroke right now. I'm just going to leave it as yellow for the time being so we can see this. But once we've done that, you would go back to Object, Path, Outline the stroke. Okay, and again, when you do that, now you have separate objects for the fill and the stroke. So now you have two filled objects as opposed to one object with a stroke. Okay, if you want to see these, you can do Ungroup. I use the keyboard equivalent for Ungroup. You can also get to it up here. So now I have the fill and I have the stroke as two separate objects. And you may have a use for this as well, by the way. But for the time being, I am actually going to stack those back on top of each other. I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to go back down to my Pathfinder tools, And in this case, I'm going to hit divide. And what this does is it cuts up my letters so that I can have that slimmer look that I wanted. Before, when I pulled the black out, the black continued underneath the yellow because that's just how it was created. Now it will have cut off from the black letters that yellow stroke. So I'm going to ungroup again. Always got to ungroup after using your Pathfinder tools. And now I can pull out the slimmer letter, and I can delete this. I can use it for something else, whatever I need. Okay, but now I can pull out those slimmer letters. Okay, and they look great. Okay, now I will have to manually adjust this R. I'm just going to go down to my pen tools. Yes, the pen tool again, I know. But the pen tool will be your best friend once you learn it, I promise. Take those off, I don't need them. Anytime you can eliminate an extra point, do it. It makes your work look much cleaner if you do. Okay, and now I've just adjusted my R so that it looks better than this R. So you can see the difference. It just thickened up this area a little bit. So I would simply delete that one, make a copy of this one, and use it over here. And again, you can select all those yellow items. One way to do it is to select same fill color. It'll select everything yellow. You hit delete on your keyboard. And then you can, whoops, a daisy. And then you can just rebuild all your objects. All right. Go to a line. Adjust your spacing. And I get pretty particular about my text layout. There's a little bit too much space here, so quite often I will do this anyway so that I can manually fix my font. If I don't like the kerning on it, I manually handle it. All right, so you can get as picky as you need to be. Designers are generally quite picky. If you're a little OCD, you're in the right place. It's just kind of a common trait amongst us. All right. So anyway, those are the things I wanted to show you guys today. Hopefully you caught it all. You can always rewatch or send me a question if you have a question about how to do something. Sometimes I'll do a little demo like this. Sometimes I'll just do it, in a text format. You guys have seen my help images. Anyway, I hope it's been helpful. You guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.